What's up, guys? It's Coach Grant with First Down Training, and today we're going to be breaking down one of the most underrated NFL rookie wide receivers, Rashad Bateman. So we're going to be talking about three specific routes from him and how he's able to create a ton of separation and why I believe he is probably one of the, if not the best route runner in that rookie class from 2021. So I hope this video helps you guys out. I hope it gives you some value. But also, fellas, if you're a wide receiver and you want an 8-week daily training schedule with all of the drills wide receivers should be doing, check out that very first link in the description below for our 8-week wide receiver on-field workout plan. You'll get over 200 plus wide receiver drills broken down with sets, repetitions, and a video example of each one on how you should do it. So check out that very first link below, fellas, if you're interested in that. Let's get started with this video. So now, first router is going to be a fade route from Bateman. Now, this is pretty much just a great example of start to finish, how you guys can get separation with the release and how you guys can finish in tight coverage over the top. Then we're going to talk about a couple of press release moves that you guys can use at his time at Minnesota, and then one clip from this past year against the Bengals. But first, we'll talk about this. So anytime that we have a DB who's lined up inside shade, right? I think anytime that you want to gauge how good a guy is with his route running, everybody in the NFL, I feel, does this at a certain level. But, for high school guys, college guys, you want to see if they know how to attack leverage and have like kind of the IQ of route running, if you will. So when we have a DB who's lined up inside shade like this, right? You see the middle of his body is even with the front foot of Bateman. That's how we know that it's inside shade coverage. If it was outside shade, the middle of his body would be even with his back foot, right? And if he would be head up, he'd be just dead even with this DB. So he's inside shade, and that means he has inside leverage. So when he has inside leverage, that means that he doesn't have any help to the inside usually. Doesn't have any safety help over the middle. They're not dropping a linebacker. He's trying to protect the inside. So when I have to run a route like a fade, like an out route, like a comeback, what we teach and what we like to do is to threaten him first to the inside, to where he doesn't want me to go, because that's going to keep him honest and protect the inside, which will set up more space for me to the outside. And that's exactly what Bateman does. He goes with this little hesitation hop release. He throws this jab fake to the inside. Again, stepping outside the DB's frame. That's where we want to step. Because anytime that you have to threaten a DB inside, you don't want to just give like a little head and shoulder fake. You also have to step there. Because when you can threaten him with a step, your upper body sells the move. He has to honor that, and he at least has to take a step to try to protect the inside. His sole purpose with inside leverage coverage is to stop the slant, to stop the dig, to force everything outside because the sideline is his help. So when I have to run a route towards the sideline, I got to make sure I create enough space for myself. And that's why I think Bateman is very, very good at what he does. He's very smart. He knows how to run routes, and he knows what is going to work against a DB, but in a simple, efficient way. You see it nowadays, a lot of wide receivers, because of all the pointless drills that get posted. They'll come out and they'll be doing all this fancy footwork, and then they give a jab inside, then they go up, and then they break on like a comeback. None of that crap is ever going to work in a live game situation. That's why you see a lot of these high school receivers, younger receivers, when they're put in a game situation, they panic because they know if they do that, when they have to get out of the route, they have to get off the ball and keep timing with their QB, they can't do all that stuff. And that's all they know how to do. So they'll just take off and run. But if you just take off and run, what's this DB going to do? That's exactly what he wants you to do. He's going to get hands into your hip and squeeze you to the sideline. So we threaten him inside to give us more space outside. And that's exactly why I feel Bateman is very, very good. Like I said, keeps it simple, but he's very efficient with his movement, and that's how you get space. So now, let's say again, this situation, we didn't completely dog this DB. We didn't get him to jump way to the inside. Got a little separation, but I got to be able to finish the play. And that's something that you look for in wide receivers, especially, if you're, a coach trying to scout talent for a wide receiver, or if you're a wide receiver just trying to stand out to a coach, which I know a lot of you are, you got to be able to finish the play. Now, when I'm in tight separation, and this happens to a lot of wide receivers at the younger level who run good routes, you don't get put in this situation a lot because you always have a ton of separation. But guys who maybe don't have as much, maybe you're on the slower side of things, whatever it might be, these are the situations where you can stand out. So when it's an over-the-shoulder catch in tight coverage, you want to do something I call being late with your hands. So you see how Bateman, when that ball is thrown, he doesn't start showing his hands and try to high point this thing. He doesn't show his hands super early. He waits till almost the last possible second to show his hands. He's late with his hands. Because the later you are with the hands, the less time the DB has to react to play the hands. So when you're late with those hands and he doesn't have time to react and you could rip and put this thing away, that is how you finish the play. That guy's right on your hip. He ain't running with his head up in the air like you are. He's playing us. So I don't want to give him any time to react. So top to bottom, that is a great route there from Bateman. Maybe we could have got a little more separation off the line, could have attacked a little bit better, but ultimately from top to bottom, that is the right concept. Let's play this thing again, full speed one more time, and now we'll get into some press release stuff from Bateman and how you guys can create space. So now, he's going to be going up against this DB who's in head-up press. So remember, we talked about head-up press where he's dead even with this wide receiver. Inside shade would be the midline of his body is even with the front foot. Outside shade would be outside foot even with his midline. So he's head-up press. So he's going to be running a one-step slant route, so a quick slant. This is something that you see a lot out of offenses when maybe you have a slant from the slot and the outside wide receiver has a 3-step slant and you're running a 1-step slant. Could be a double slant concept, whatever it might be. But this is a great way to get off a press when you have a 1-step slant. And that is by using something called a wide step. So again, shows that he has a lot of intelligence with his route running. It's not a complicated release, but he's perfecting this type of a release, or he has it perfected. So let's play this thing full speed. So he does a little kick step, throws wide, gets that DB to jump, and then is able to win on that slant. So when he's here, you're going to hear me say throughout the remainder of this video, I'm going to talk a lot about how when we're trying to get a DB to move, you have to step outside of his frame. We talked about it a little bit against when that DB was inside shade, we're trying to threaten him where? Inside. So I got to step outside of his frame, throw my hip inside to get him to move inside, right? Because I want to threaten him where he doesn't want me to go. Now, on this specific release, DB's head up, and we're running a slant. So I obviously want him to kind of jump to the outside so I could get space back inside. So if I have this 1-step slant, taking this wide step with the back foot, which is essentially where you take the foot that's behind you in your stance, and you step wide to threaten to the outside, to get the DB to think fade so I could slip back underneath. Now I could use this wide step if I had to run like a dig route. I could use this wide step on a slant. I could use it, honestly, if I took an inside release and ran a fade, if you're like in the middle of the field, not in the goal line, obviously. So when you do this type of release, it is so important, like I said, that you step outside his frame, but how do I do that effectively? So what a lot of wide receivers will do here is that they try to step outside this DB's frame, but they'll take a step, but their body remains to the inside. Their hip and their shoulder is not attached to their foot. That's at least how I like to think of it. I think of it wherever your foot goes, that hip and shoulder goes. Because now when you do that and your hips and your shoulders are committed to the outside, a DB in man is supposed to be watching your hips. So when you can do this as you step, that's more likely to get him to jump. Because that actually looks like an outside release. Now, another reason is for balance. A lot of wide receivers, when they leave their hips and shoulders to the inside, they don't bring it with the cut and they reach way outside of their frame, not only outside the DB's frame, but outside of their frame. They have no explosion. They can't drive off of this cut and accelerate. But when you bring that upper half and that cut remains inside your frame and you're stepping outside of his frame, we have balance and we have explosion. And that is the key off the line. Again, you see this with a lot of the movement that Bateman does. It is very efficient. It is very simple, but it works because he's very good at the easy stuff. That's what you guys have to perfect this stuff. It's not all about doing the fancy movement, the fancy footwork. It's about perfecting the things that are going to work. If it's going to work, it's simple, right? You want to keep things simple off the line. It doesn't take a whole lot to beat a DB. What you have to focus on is your technique, why you're doing it, and being able to keep timing with that QB when it comes to a press release. Now, what he does here is he takes this like kick step, right? So all that kick step starts to do, a lot of wide receiver coaches will say that, oh, well, that's a false step. You don't want to do that. That's not a false step. That kick step is for balance and to kind of load his hips up, because when you kick behind, your hips are in a very narrow position, if you will. So when your hips are in that narrow position, it's easier for you to throw them out wide. It's almost like a springboard, so your hips and your shoulders can be attached with the cut to give you that balance and explosion out of there. That's a textbook release there by Rashad Bateman. Very simple, but very efficient. Reminds me a lot of Davante Adams, right? The way Adams runs routes, it's not super complicated, but everything that he does is incredibly efficient, and there is little to zero wasted motion. Let's play it again full speed one more time. Great job by Bateman using that wide step and then winning on that slant route. So now, one other thing, this is going to be another slant route here. This is against a DB who's inside shade now. So I just mainly want to talk about why he kind of chose this release and what made this release work. So I'm going to play his full speed. So this is from his time at Minnesota. So he comes out here and you see how he's widening, working outside this DB's frame to get separation. So anytime that I have a DB who's lined up inside shade and I got to run a slant route, inside shade press, got to run a slant. The main thing that you want to do, you obviously don't want to just try to run in front of him because, again, he's inside leverage, so what's he trying to protect? He's trying to protect the inside. So if you're running this outside route, like we talked about in the very beginning, like Bateman was running that fade route, and he's inside shape. You'd want to attack him, threaten him to the inside, and then take the outside to give yourself more space out here. So now when I run this slant, he's not going to give this up. The whole reason he's playing inside shade is to protect the slant. I have to attack him outside shoulder. I have to attack him here to try to get his hips to flip so I could slip back underneath. And that's exactly what Bateman does, or just to get him to widen off the platform. I don't necessarily need his hips to flip every single time. So when he comes off the line, again, you see that little kick step that he uses because that allows him to actually get off the ball fast and gain some ground with his upper half attached to the foot. Now, you see when he makes this last cut, he does kind of this like triple step move. He's attacking the outside shoulder. He's threatening hips and shoulders are attached with the cut. And that is what will make that DB flip his hips. Just like anything, fellas, his eyes are on my hips. So my hips and shoulders always got to be attached to the cut. And if I know the right IQ and I know where to attack a DB to get him to move, I will always be able to get separation. So fellas, Bateman's one of those guys. Great guy to learn from. Everything he does is incredibly simple. All of you guys, I don't care what level you're at, youth to high school, can mimic some of the stuff that he does. A lot of times people have this misconception like, oh, well, he's a professional. He can do that stuff. A lot of the stuff that they do is simple. They are just very, very good at the simple stuff. And that's why I think he's one of the most underrated rookie wide receivers that we have in the league. And I'm excited to see this upcoming year. Let's play this thing again, full speed one more time. Great job by Bateman attacking the outside shoulder and getting that DB to move off of his platform. All right, fellas, I really want to thank you for watching. I really appreciate it. If you guys have any questions at all, don't hesitate to leave those in the comment section below. Always appreciate the feedback. Always great to hear from you guys as usual. And again, fellas, if you'd like an 8-week daily wide receiver training schedule with all the on-field drills you should be doing with sets, reps, and a video example of each one, check out that very first link in the description below. I'll see you guys next time.